solidly shaped my book has been wonderful. Secondly, I'd like to thank Iva. I'd like to thank not just for launching my book today, but for being a continued mentor to me over the last few years as a writer, and for also being someone who I'm sure will be a mentor to me in the future. I'd like to thank all of my friends and family for coming here today. I've got a lot of family that have come from Newcastle, and I've got friends that have flown from Queensland, and I've got other friends that have come up from the South Coast, and from all around Sydney, just to be here for this special occasion, and I thank you all for coming. I'd also, lastly, like to particularly thank my parents for the support that they've given me over the years, and I'd like to say, I can see my brother over there. I'd like to thank my brother Adam and his partner Karen, who have come down today even though they've just had a baby. I'd also like to sincerely thank my husband, Michael, who's travelled with me to all of these places and has read all of my stories, I think, since I was about 19. So has always been my first editor and has always supported everything I've done over many years. So thank you. Iva called me yesterday and said, make sure that you say something about how the book was written, people like that. And I spent a lot of time this morning trying to think about what to say, and anticipating some of the things I thought Iva might say. I thought I'd actually talk about the personal aspect of the book. I finished most of Small Indiscretions about 2 years ago, and I wrote the stories over several years before that. So this book actually represents a huge period in my life. It's actually about a third of my life has been, not working solely on this book, but for a third of my life I've had it in my imagination and have been writing it and tweaking it. I often get the comment, and I know Iva brought it up today, that I don't write about my own life or my own experiences, and that this is unusual in particular for a young writer. But I look at Small Indiscretions, and even though I might be writing about a young paranoid boy in Jakarta, or a Marilyn Monroe impersonator, or a couple in Brunei drinking bootleg alcohol, there's a lot of myself there in between the lines. When I reread the stories, I think about all the places that I've been and of how these places become a part of you. I come from a long line of travellers and movers, particularly on my dad's side of the family. Travelling and living between and amongst other cultures was a huge part of my upbringing, and so it seemed really natural after my family returned to Sydney to live 12 years ago that I kept on travelling. Luckily, I was living a stone's throw from this whole region called Asia, which I knew nothing about, and so over a period of about 8 years, I left Australia again and again as soon as I could get the funds and the resources and the time ready to go. As soon as you put me in a foreign space, I walk for hours and hours and hours on end. I can't do this in Australia, but as soon as I'm somewhere else, I can walk for 12, 14 hours a day and not get tired. I like walking around main streets and back alleys, and I like to see cities, and I like to see suburbia, and I like to see shopping centres and the ways that other people live, and I like to think about the way that the landscapes that people are in affect them. My stories were all initially written as fragments of something that I saw. I always started mostly by writing things down that I didn't understand. So I think, in a way, Small Indiscretions is about a lack of understanding. It's about a bunch of non-Asian characters hanging out in Asian cities and not really being able to fully comprehend what they are seeing. It's about foreigners exploring foreign places and seeing what questions the places and the people and the landscape ask of travellers. I wrote this book for people like me who first read a lot of fiction set in the places they are travelling to, long before they ever tried reading a straightforward travel guide. I think that writers offer up questions, and I think it's those questions that are much more interesting than the facts that any straightforward travel guide can provide us with. What we're going to do now is have a number of people come up who I've asked to help me read some of my stories. I wanted, in my reading, to capture the fact that all of these stories are written from very different perspectives and from very different people, and I thought a better way of capturing that was to get different people to read. I'm really privileged in that over the last few years I've been a part of the Westside Writers Group, most of whom are here today. I've asked a few of them to come and help me read. I've asked Mohammed Ahmed, who is the head of writing and publications at BIDS, and I've asked some other members of this group to come up and share some stories with me. Peter Bedford, we've got Luke Carmen, we've got Peter Pilates, and we've got Fiona Wright with us today, who are all amazing readers, and I think it's a real privilege and a real honour to have them involved in my launch, and I'm sure you'll find it fantastic to have them read to you. So can I call those people up?
At the end. I'll read at the end.
There we go. Thanks, Felicity. Because I'm the first of these Westside writers to come up and speak to you today, I wanted to say on behalf of us all that I'm sure I do speak for everyone here when I say that we're all really thrilled to be able to support you today, and honoured and privileged to have been asked to read. Thank you. So I'm going to read from Falling in the Cow, which is that story about Marilyn I wrote this later, and it's probably my favourite story in the book. It is the 11th month of her sobriety. It is after the hospital. It is after the divorce. It is towards the end of her first year here, and Maggie is still holding on. That old anxious feeling seems to be going away. It rears itself only occasionally in fits and starts. In this place, she found in herself a new simple joy, but also something else that was always there at the back of her throat, beyond what she could grasp. She looks at her reflections in the mirror walls. She's wearing a pink lycra pants and a shirt that says, "Welcome to Macau." Maggie is sitting in the Royal Lounge on the top floor of Lex Casino, thinking about the last one who jumped from the roof of the hotel. She imagines him, just for a moment, his body sailing through the sky. The picture fits in with the surreal nature of the place, but she tries not to think about it. She prefers to think about the millions of coloured lights outside and the way they leave reflections on her skin that take hours to fade. She wants this place to light her up like a Christmas tree. She wants to be plugged in. She's sitting on a lounge in the upstairs bar, drinking orange juice and watching Sonny set up for the night. He works in a whir of efficiency, polishing all the bottles of spirits on the shelf behind the bar. Several distorted images of his far too angular face emerge in the champagne glasses he's sitting out on the counter. "How are you going, Sonny?" she says to him. He stops and contemplates how to phrase the answer before replying. "Good. I am going good." "That's good," she says, and gives him a wink. "Working hard?" He smiles at her and offers a soft, embarrassed laugh. She spends hours this way with Sonny, before and after the shows, having these strained conversations she is not so sure she understands. Someday, she'll probably feel compelled to give him a kiss, or maybe even a little bit more. Not because she really wants to, but because she feels sorry for him on account of his ugliness. She's always had a soft spot for undesirable people.
Jane is imagining herself as the long, thin leaf of some exotic plant. She has sandy hair and a tight ponytail, the hint of green eyeshadow, clean, short fingernails, a charm bracelet around her ankle. Her dress is a loose cotton thing tied around her shoulders. She is sitting on the balcony, watching the rain come in over the mountains in misty sheets. The whole landscape has a hosed-down look. She runs her palms over her knees and thinks of the boys back home. School's out for summer. Everyone she knows is hanging out car windows in their swimmers, driving back and forth on the esplanade. At home, there is noise and parties, and everyone has their arms around someone else. And although her father has brought her to the other side of the world, to Borneo, a name that sounds like it belongs to a wild creature, she feels like she is all locked up. Her father is sitting at the desk he keeps on the balcony to escape the heat trapped inside the tin roof. He's writing furiously. He always is, as though there are so many words that desperately need to be written at precisely this moment. Jane looks down and pretends to read her Bible, but really, she's watching the maid place tea and a bowl of fruit at the edge of her father's desk. She brings Jane a plum. "Beautiful," she says, as she always does, rubbing the underneath of Jane's chin and smiling. Her teeth are white against the green tattoo across her lips. The first group arrives for the morning, and Jane watches them climb off the back of a ute, wood chips falling from their jeans and flannelette shirts. This is the way the weekday hours are organised. They are partitioned by prayer groups and fellowships, Bible studies and meetings about community fundraisers. Her father can understand what's going on. He's learned to speak the local dialect after so many years of coming here. Jane can't understand a word. She watches the motion of it, the comings and goings. Evenings. The maid brings them noodles with vegetables, sometimes with chicken, always with an egg on top. Fridays they have fish. There is always another pot of tea at 8 for her father, before he goes out back to slap cans of water across the bare flesh, like the locals to get the day off his skin. Some evenings, the older men from the village outside the lager come to sit with her father. There is a kind of stilted chatter and pipe smoke seeping all through the house from the front porch. Jane thought the whole world would happen to her here, but instead she's sealed off like the pages inside a hardback book. Her father drinks tea at 8. She watches her father's protege, Joe, come and go as he pleases. His hair a little too long at the front, his favourite pair of jeans a little too loose over his hips. He leaves his shoes stranded in the middle of the hallway before he retires to his room in the evenings. It starts to storm again. The rain sounds like a river rushing down the corrugated iron roof. It's late December and the dampness has its own weight. Jane turns on the radio. Her father drinks tea. Joe's bed creaks as he stirs somewhere in the back of the house.
This story is called Rituals. My first summer here in the school bus is running on the heat haze that shimmers off the asphalt. To my left, the steadily buzzing hum of motorcycles electrifies the morning. It is 40 degrees, perhaps more if you adjust for humidity, and not so unusual for June in Jakarta. The hum of the motorcycles is drowned out by the noise of people sitting on the roof of the bus, chatting and waving flags. The white heat of the sun burns into my skin through the window. The kids on the bus are laughing and shouting, making me nervous. The heat and the buzzing and the shouting kids make it hard to concentrate. I know I'll slip up. I slip up. I start holding my breath at each traffic light, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, until it changes green. By the time we get to school, I run out of breath. The bus is stopped by the gates by the usual 2 men in uniform who stick their metal detectors underneath the bus and smile at us through the windows. They are red-faced and oily looking when they smile, and I wonder what would happen if they missed something. What if they missed something? I see the bus ripped apart like a sardine can that has been opened in the wrong place, and I imagine all the kids not laughing anymore, spread out on the pavement, fish eyes glazed over. When we are let out of the bus, all the kids go their separate ways. I'm alone at the edge of the playground, watching and waiting, and I make a list. 1, you remembered to kiss your mother before you left the house this morning. 2, you made sure that you put all your things in the right place so that Amy wouldn't touch your stuff while you were out. 3, you don't have tutoring after school today. 4, it all helps. When I catch my breath, I go to class. I'm not crazy, not because of the things I do or say. In fact, I'm the smartest in 8th grade. Everyone knows it. It is commonly accepted as fact. Only Miriam is perhaps better than me at English. But she's a girl and everyone knows that girls are better at English. The other students come to me for help. Sometimes I ask them to go away. Mrs. Ibanishi asks me if I'm okay. I'm okay. Here, I have to take the elevator up to the level 65. This is normal here, not like at home where maybe you have a second story. Central Jakarta is like this whole world made out of levels where everyone lives at a different point in the sky. And when the elevator stops, I get out and walk down the hallway that smells like eggs and fish oil, and I count the number of doors to where I live. And inside, Amy is cooking dinner. My mother is sitting with Celia Roberts and her daughter Olive, who goes to my school but is in year 10. They all smile at me when I come in, and I know that what's inside their heads, they're all thinking, don't do anything weird.
The wanton. He draws a line down from her chin to the top of her pelvis with his tongue. He moves his finger along the line of Shrey's skin as if to open her. He wants her. He wants to save her from men like himself. He wants all of these things, all at the same time. This is his dilemma. He runs his fingers over the scars and hard places of flesh on her leg where the skin is raised. She stares at him. It is kind of a blank, indecipherable stare that says she is looking right through him to whatever lies outside the walls of their hotel room. She's very skinny, very dark. Matt leans back against the bedhead and folds his arm in his lap. Not now, Shrey says, in that tone that implies she's accusing him of something rather than asking a question. No, not now. Maybe not ever, he thinks. She leans over for the crumpled shirt and pulls it over her head. Her Walkman is on the bedside table. She peels back the duct tape that holds it together and turns over the same Guns N' Roses tape she has been playing for the last 2 days. She lies back to listen with a thoughtful look on her face. They understand me, she had said yesterday when he asked why she listened to them so much. Guns N' Roses make him think of high school and kids with bad taste of teenagers. Matt's always been a Bob Dylan fan himself. Shrey listened to Dylan on his MP3 player for a long time before declaring that his music wasn't good because Dylan complains too much. It is Tuesday, and Shrey hasn't left his hotel room since the hotel owner delivered her on Sunday night. You want a woman? The hotel owner had said. No, Matt replied, but the hotel owner had simply pushed her through the door. It doesn't seem that strange in this place, in Pompeii, the town of outlaws. That was 3 days ago, and they've hardly left the hotel since. Not that he's done anything really, but he just watches her and watches her. He knows where she is at every moment of the day. Shrey with her bangles clicking against each other everywhere she goes. Aren't you scared of me? Scared of you? She smiles. You're going to kill me? She shrugs and says, no reason to be scared. She has narrow hips, small breasts. He weighs almost twice what she does. He's big, too big. He has those clown's feet that look ridiculous next to anyone else's. Or this largeness that give him a slow and clumsy look in this way. He has always thought that his body constantly undermines his intelligence. Shrey is smaller and tougher than him. She goes out with him every day, and when he leaves the room for a short while to check if the border to Thailand has been reopened. It opens and closes, but it will never, it seems, be open at the right time for him to cross. Shrey says this has something to do with a disagreement between Thailand and Cambodia over who owns Angkor Wat. He holds her hand on the way over to the border. He holds it for a little while, and then lets it go again. He holds it, he lets it go. He's not sure what to do with it, and she'll let him do anything with her. Anything at all.
I'm reading last, but what I'm reading comes first, and it's called Next. she will go to Angkor to see the temples, or to the Ganges to pray. She continues her list of cities and countries as she rolls over on the bed to reach for another cigarette. Blake pictures her insides as she lights it. He imagines that her body is like a cave that is burnt out and uninhabitable. Over the past few days, he's tried to get her to eat more, but all she'll eat are the strawberries they pick themselves at the local strawberry farms. They fight about it sometimes, the smoking and the lack of eating, but he never takes it too far. He doesn't mind so much about the cigarette burns in the blankets, the bones that stick out from behind her breasts, the money that goes missing from his wallet, just as long as she stays. Their relationship is one of those things that just happened. She didn't seem to mind it happening, and he needed some company. He met her at the bus stop in Kuala Lumpur. He was meant to be going back home to Queensland, but instead he got on the bus with Monica and came to the Cameron Highlands. It was cheap, and he had the money that Veterans Affairs had given him when he was discharged. He could last a long time here, maybe months if he lived cheaply enough, maybe more if he sold his medals. Perhaps he would never need to go home. Maybe he could stay here with Monica and the smell of the tea plantations in the distance. He paid up front for 2 weeks at the Hillview Lodge and was about to pay for another 2. Outside their room on the 3rd floor, there is a wall of green plants. In the afternoons, they sometimes sit on the balcony and watch the rain pour down over the trees. Monica tells him about the places she's been. He hasn't been anywhere really, except Afghanistan and Kiev. He tells her about the desert, the endless mountains, the heat coming off the pavement in Ansari Square, and the street vendors who sell coffee in bowls at the side of the road. He doesn't tell her about waking up in the hospital after their truck was ambushed, only to find that he was perfectly all right, except for the missing thumbs. He doesn't tell her about the young guy who woke up next to him, numb from the waist down, the one who kept asking, "Are those my legs? Are those legs mine?" Sometimes they walk the 5 kilometres up to the Bow Tea plantations. Monica pinches sprigs of aniseed leaves and chives from the farms they pass along the way, and sucks on them between her teeth the way old men do with toothpicks. They stop frequently on their way up the mountain and stand among the rectangular rows of tea plants. She likes to watch the plantation workers pick at the tops of the bushes with their shears and throw their pickings over their heads and into the basket strapped to their backs. She says it makes her feel closer to God. When they get to the tea shop at the top of the hill, they always ask to see the film they play in the dark room at the back of the shop. The woman who works there knows them now. She just waves them into the room and presses play on the little TV in the corner. In the dark, while the video goes through the tea-making process, Monica puts her hand on his knee and squeezes it tight. He likes it there, in this little room, with her in the dark. Afterwards, they sit on the balcony and drink tea until the sun sets, and they have to hitch a ride down the mountain again on the back of a plantation worker's van, or with some tourists who take pity and offer them a ride. Monica collects email addresses and phone numbers from the people they hitch rides with. She tells them, in an earnest kind of way, that she will contact them when she gets to China, or Japan, or whatever country they come from. Today, walking by the tea plantations, it occurred to him just how different this landscape is from where he'd been. It wasn't the punched-awake glow of the desert, mysterious and inflamed. This landscape has that endless kind of green that makes you think of wet things, like oceans and lakes and bars. It's the kind of landscape that happens when you stop looking over your shoulder, the type you notice when you dare to catch your breath, when you thought that you were safe.
I'm going to end with my favourite story from the section, which is complete. Agnes flew to Phuket to meet Steve, who sometimes liked to call himself Sharon. It didn't bother her, the name change, like it bothered some of their other friends from high school. What's in a name? When she started taking French classes in high school, she put an accent over the E in her name and insisted on being called Agnès. Their friend Paul had called her Anya, Anya, until he turned red in the face. Steve understood. He always understood things that others didn't. The importance of standing close but not too close to someone else in a bar, or looking away when a person is embarrassing themselves. Agnes and Paul and Steve used to call themselves the three amigos, but now that Paul has gotten himself married, there is only Agnes and Steve, and the two amigos doesn't sound so clever. Agnes and Steve, they are the only single people left in their social group. Everyone else has grown up to be responsible folk with responsible jobs and responsible investments in suburban property. Well, no, not really, but that's the way Agnes likes to picture it, like a 1950s sitcom. At 32, she doesn't think it'll ever happen to her. She doesn't care, or at least that's what she tells everyone. She tries not to think about it very much. Agnes is between jobs at the moment. She has been in a similar situation for the past few years, flying from one job to the other, moving from town to town. She is perpetually struck by the feeling that there is something missing from her life that she will find in some other time and space. She calls Steve occasionally to tell him of this sense of incompleteness. He is like her mother hen, strong but lovable. You just need to stop thinking so much, he says. But that's Steve. He has never in his life, to her knowledge, been struck with any kind of nervous condition. He just does without thinking, and that's why she loves to be around him. Steve is working in Bangkok, helping to set up branches of the hotel that he manages in Sydney. Agnes wanted to go somewhere that was a little more real than a Phuket. She wanted to go to a tiny little beach on the edge of nowhere and eat fish that she caught out of the sea with her own bare hands. What caught her attention most in the brochures was the fact that you could rent a chair in the sand at this beach. There was something about that. She was from the school of beachgoers who say, you just plop your towel down wherever there is space. Bringing a chair was tantamount to snobbery. Renting one, well, that was something else entirely. Steve had managed to get free accommodation in a bungalow on the beach. Apparently it was on a proposed building site for one of his company's hotels. Free, the beach, that solved it. It's rustic, he said. A bed, a table, a couple of chairs, and cold shower. But the view is worth a mint. Agnes has resolved to give herself over fully and completely to the spirit of this holiday. Paradise, the brochures say in long flowing letters beneath pictures of couples sitting in restaurants overlooking the sea. She will give herself over to paradise. She is still contemplating the idea as she walks past immigration and into the reception area of the airport. Steve is holding up a piece of cardboard that says Agnès. He's wearing a large tight orchid behind his ear. He looks ridiculous. Everything about him is totally ludicrous. This is Steve at his best, funny without being funny, like one of those stand-up comedians who can make anyone laugh just by the inappropriate look of moroseness on their face. Above his head is a sign that says, "Welcome to Phuket, Pearl of the South." "Welcome," he says, grabbing her arm and steering her through the throngs of people trying to sell her a ride in a taxi, a motorcycle, or some form of transport she has never heard of. The humidity grabs her like 1,000 arms and wraps itself around her. Steve passes her a bottle of water and she notices that he's wearing thongs and board shorts as if he's just come from the beach. "It's good to see you," he says as the tuk-tuk stops suddenly and their heads both jerk forward. Their driver speeds up and jumps behind another car where he stops abruptly again. Agnes tries to breathe deeply. "He drives like you," Steve says, turning to Agnes with a smile. "It should be illegal in this country too." "Shut up," she yells amid the jerking movement of their heads and the drone of car horns beeping over and over again. She doesn't really mind his teasing though. She's just happy to be here with him in the heat with the prospect of going to the beach not that far away, happy to be on an adventure. The hair on her arm stands up straight every time she and Steve bump their arms together. She doesn't know why, the heat maybe. Someone in the car next to them is singing Kylie Minogue in Thai. Agnes could burst with happiness at this moment. Thank you.